Okay. Well, first and foremost, thank you to the Mogul team for having us on. It's a big privilege, and we know we've shared a stage with a lot of aces and holes in this last today and this last few years here. So adding basement suites. So who are we? JP Langlois and Remi Noel. If you really want to say it well, a couple Frenchmen, local contractors, businessmen, which we incorporated in 2019. We are investors ourselves. We're a supporter of many local realtor groups, and we're family men who believe in high quality and craftsmanship. So what do we specialize in? We specialize in tenant improvements, apartments, commercial, retail, secondary suites of single family homes, duplex with new or non-conforming suites, commercial space development, and consultant services before purchasing or renovation. So that's what we had done with one of Adrian's clients that were looking at a building this weekend. We love being the go-to people for investors. So if you guys have something out of towners, we love servicing that kind of work, and we take pride in our stuff to set you up for success. So what we've done is since we've incorporated in the last 2 years, we've done 19 suited basements and contracts in place at the moment. And we've completed over 60 of those ourselves in our combined careers. We chase apartment buildings too. So last year alone, we did 31 apartment suites, full gut renovations. And that was during our COVID years. So we definitely don't keep our foot off the gas pedal. What we stand for, so we back up our craftsmanship with 3 years of warranty, and that applies for anything that we do. We have a no BS approach. We are very proactive maintenance. We come at it a different way than just any builder will come at it. We are like the Ulco of the secondary suiting, where we'll come and do things a little bit differently, less maintenance, a better return for you guys in the end. And we do understand the Edmonton market. Now for the main event. Non-conforming versus conforming. So there's two types of basement suites that you can go. You can buy one that's already existing and not legalized with the city, or else we can go build one from scratch. So I don't really care in the end if I go into your basement suite, whether it's conforming or not. What I do care are smoke separation. What I do care about is smoke detectors and egress windows. So really, egress windows and smoke detectors are my nemesis. So if I come into your suite and I'm not seeing this, I'm going to call you out on it. Why? Because as landlords, the first thing we need to do is make things safe. And I don't care if you have one place or 100 places, this is across the board. So egress windows. So you need 543 square inches for an egress window. So if it's a slider, it doesn't matter. It cannot be less than 15 inches wide or high. And just so that you know, the 543 is a magical number of opening space for somebody to come out. Window wells aren't required if the window is above grade, but anything below grade needs a 30-inch window well. Biggest thing is if a fire ever burned down, could be a big lawsuit at your hands if you're preventing your tenants from leaving. Big obstacles. So when we're taking on these projects, the biggest things are the budget. What is realistic? Can you handle the project and process? Drawings and permit timeframes, schedule, unforeseen extras, and change orders once the contract is signed. So those are my top 6 that I could see that cause issues along the way. And my goal today is try to streamline and make you understand the process that we go through. So realistic budget, the big 3. Let's go through your HVAC. Here's a picture of a secondary suite that we are currently wrapping up. So he had an old furnace, one furnace, you need 2 furnaces. Was the furnace old? Yes. So there's no use putting an old furnace and moving it across the basement suite, and might as well just go with 2. It's not that big of a cost difference, right? Do you have separate ductwork? Most single family dwellings that we are seeing do not have two furnaces and they do not have separate ductwork. So we need to fully remove the ductwork most of the time and put in new stuff that is a lower profile. And it just accommodates the space a little bit better. Ceiling height, okay. Sometimes you got big bulkheads that go through and running HVAC through it or around it could cause issues with height restrictions with the city. Kitchen and bathroom venting, is it required? Yes, it is. A vent in the basement needs a 6-inch venting pipe to outside. So that doesn't matter if you're an old suite or a new suite. If you're trying to legalize it, the city will request you to have venting. Furnaces, the basement furnace must have an interlock. So it must be connected to an exterior venting apparatus like a fan or a hood range, that if you ever had to circulate air or remove air, it would fire up your furnace. It would let your furnace suck in the air and it would exhaust out a vent. And then baseboard heaters, sure, they sound cute and they sound cheap, but they're not in the end. So why are they not? I'll go through the baseboard heaters with more of the electrical stuff. How's the layout? Groundwork required. Here's the basement suite that you just seen. Here's in the bedroom. We had to do a lot of reworking. Backwater valve required. A lot of people are asking about that. Do I need one? Anytime you do any groundwork in an existing suite, you do need a backwater valve, and the city requires you to put it. So it has to be within 2 feet of the entry point of your house. So with certain layouts, we often, when we start laying things out, we go and find out where the sewer is coming and going from. And that's where we kind of can tweak the layout more than anything. Is a sump pump required? No, sump pump required isn't by any code or anything. It's more of a personal preference. Depends on your water table more than anything. Is your sewer line good? Is it in good shape? Did you get an inspection on it when you purchased the house? We recently had a client that had a sewer line that was completely falling apart before we even started. So, that was a $7,000 touch for her. So certain things that you need to be aware of, like in the end, sewer still flows downhill. So just make sure that your sewer line to the city is good. And if it falls on your property, it's at your cost. Copper versus ABS stacks and water lines, are they good shape? Are they old? If we're doing all this work, is it worth that extra little bit to clean them up? Maybe go with an ABS product, maybe last the lifetime of the house. Probably is. Hot water tank, are you looking on a hot water on demand? Are you just thinking of conventional? Or you want to go an oversized, maybe conventional, so it could keep up with the tenants up and down? I have a lot of secondary suites and I've never had a complaint of any of my old tanks or newer tanks. I guess it's more the tenants that you put in the profile and how much water they are using. But in the end, it does not matter if you're using a regular hot water tank or a hot water on demand, but it will affect your costs. And then your finishing budget. Know your tenant profile. Like if you're in a little rougher of an area, why are you upgrading to, a 5 mil, 7 mil flooring? Why are you quartz countertop or granite? Know your tenant profile more than anything and where your ARV's at in the end. Electrical, do you need separate meters? No, you do not need separate meters on in up down. Some people prefer it so tenants can run their own utilities. I run a flat fee, just like Adrian said earlier, on all my rentals, and I have no issues with that. If you want it, it's just a preference. Do you need a service upgrade? Well, that depends. Are you thinking of baseboard heaters? If you are, you might need a 125 amp service, or you might need another panel or another meter. Depends on your property, but if you are just doing a legal secondary suite, you need a minimum of 100 amp service. So anything less than that, 70 amp, you're still seeing them out there, not too many, but they will have to be swapped out and you will have to upgrade the service. Can I replace the panel? Sure, you can. Or can you do a sub panel? Sure. I like to go in putting a big new panel. The biggest thing is some of the older panels, breakers aren't available anymore. So if you ever see a Federal Pioneer panel, you're changing it out. A lot of them have been discontinued. Junction boxes. When we're separating floors, we often find junction boxes. It was just an old way of doing things. But when we go and separate these, we're separating upstairs to downstairs now. So we're pulling new feeds to certain places. Some junction boxes will stay. Some can be rerouted. But you cannot have junction boxes behind a drywall ceiling. That's a no-no, and you need access to all of them. Pot lights versus fixtures, doesn't matter. That all is just falls into budget. If you have a dark basement, I highly recommend maybe you light it up with pot lights, make it bright. There's other ways of adding value without adding big cost. And maybe that's, you know, opening up a wall or opening up the space so you just get a little more natural light. It depends. There's many options. Smoke detectors and CO2s, absolutely must. In a basement, we will have up to 5 smoke detectors. And you're saying, whoa, why would I need 5 smoke detectors? Well, you need one in each room. You need one in the mechanical room. You need one in a common space, and you need one 5 meters from the bedroom. So there you go. You've got, you know, they add up pretty quick. Kitchen, let's say you've got an old basement suite and you're trying to just conform it. Well, the city will require you to go and have 20 amp plugs in there. So a lot of times you do have to change some of the electrical, even though it's existing. If it was never grandfathered in, or if it was never code, like it didn't pass code, then you will run into some issues like this. Okay, so let's go. Can you handle the process? Are you a renovator? That is a good question. I know James will say he can't lift a hammer. He'll hire his guys to do it. Some people can, some people can't. Do you enjoy being stressed? Do you understand trades? Do you understand the schedule impacts? Do you understand the extra work that you're going to have to put in over and above your everyday working hours? So that's where we come in. If you don't know the process, I highly recommend you hire somebody that does to help you through it, because days turn into months, and months it could turn into easily half a year of extra time on a project. And that's the last thing you want, is not to have tenants there and to be stressed about your basement not being done. Drawings and permits. So tools, 3D tours or Matterports that the realtors do, those are great. If you get a hands on those help you with your designs, those help you with your layouts. You could grab those drawings and then you could tweak them everywhere before you go see a designer, or maybe before you see a subcontractor, and you can write things out of what you want. There's so many apps out there right now with house ideas. Just be mindful of the shiny ball syndrome on such apps like House and all that. Like there's some people that blow things up. Just, it comes with a budget. Your wants. Do you want a 1, 2, 3 bedroom? Do you want 1 to 2 bath? Do you want en suites? Is an extra window possible to add natural light so that your tenants use less utilities? Do you want separated laundry? Some people like the back door used as a laundry pad, but some people, I know a lot of pets these days, they like access to a yard. So what I've done previously is maybe add a double set of laundry at the bottom. So now you've got 2 sets. You know, it could be the mechanical room there too. Sometimes you can move the furnace in that area, and then you've got a common space. It will take some of your square footage, but in the end, maybe it's a better layout for them. Your time frames. So the city is improving. In the fall, I had lags up to 8 weeks for permits. Right now, we're seeing anywhere between 4 and 6. So they've gone back to where they should be. But either way, if you can get it, your drawings and your package clean to them, that makes a big difference. So the city has lots of information. You go step by step, find out what you want, or else if you hire somebody like me, I will take care of that headache. So schedule. A typical project schedule is between 3 and 5 months for a new development of a secondary suite. Why is that? Well, there's from permit point to construction, I'm saying that's a 3 month minimum, and that's a target that is, you can't have any bottlenecks, you can't have any change orders, like you can't have major, it's got to be a pretty clean construction. But 4 months is very realistic. And then 5 months by the time you're, sometimes there's some delays in things, or there's a few failed inspections. And this is very common. I know people come to me and they're like, oh my gosh, I failed, or I'm going to fail. I don't know what I'm going. The city's going to come in, give you a red sticker. You go and you figure what you need to do to fix it, and you move on. Don't let it absorb you. Don't let it dampen your spirit. It's just a process that we go through, and every inspector has a different idea of how it is. Even for us, we do get red stickers, and we fight them pretty quick when we get them. But in the end, there's always a changing code or changing rules in this game. So it is not for the faint of heart. Late permits, change orders, client wants, those are all things that be very mindful of. Unforeseens, cracks. Foundations in Edmonton, we see cracks all the time. We just started a project for a gentleman that had 171 linear feet. He had horizontal cracks, he had vertical cracks. What is he going to do? We're going to fix them. We're going to make the changes, and we're going to move forward. Like, what else are you going to do? But in our environment, in the Edmonton market, a lot of the bungalows, a lot of the even new builds, you're seeing cracks in foundations. We live in harsh weather. It's not a big deal. We inject them, we move forward. In this picture, we've got a panel that's a 70 amp breaker. So we'll be changing the panel. We had a sewer line that was decaying. We had a sump pump that was just a pail. So we'll be putting a new sump pump, and then we had to do, new sewer, crack injection, electrical, and the stack was all changed. So pretty much everything in the system that was existing, we replaced or fixed and brought up to today. Aluminum wiring, that's a big cost. Please be aware of. We still see it here and there. And as Alco said earlier, material costs are on the rise, people. Like, just lumber alone has tripled since last spring. Soundproofing has premiums. You're seeing every month, you're seeing new prices coming in. So please know that a lot of your contractors or a general contractor aren't out to gouge you. We have our certain margins where we have to hit, and targets are moving and pricing is moving. Change orders. So here's a beautiful picture of a basement suite want, right? Yeah, right. This is a log cabin, and you won't get that for a basement suite, but without a price. So remember the budget you started with, please. Changes, adding things are so easy, but know your ARV in the end. A realtor can help you with that. Know your tenant demographic. Is it a need or a want? Can it be added later? Maybe you rent it for a couple of years and add value to down the road after, when you've generated some cash out of it. Like, is it needed now? Is it critical? Does it suit your tenant profile? But all of these change orders and after make a huge impact on schedule. So because we have to stop sometimes what we're doing to go add something to it, and then go back to the drawing board and go back to where we were. So it definitely delays contracts. So the cleaner you can be off the get-go, the cleaner you could be with your contractor, the cleaner you could be with your design, is huge for the schedule. But when done right, it could work out, and it could work out really well. We've made a lot of happy clients over the last couple of years, and we're still planning on adding more. And I'll run you through the latest work here.
Looks like it's just loading.
Yeah.
One thing I know that we do have some people who this is their first time, and you mentioned ARV. So do you want to just explain what that means?
ARV is an after repair value. So from when you buy to when you renovate, I'll just pause this, to when you refinance, we want to know what the property will be worth. So ARV is after repair value.
Awesome. Thank you.
There you go. There you go. So I don't know, there's a little bit of chat there, Adrian, or do you want to just read some out, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, so man, that looked awesome. I love that video, and you know, talking about Matterports and talking about some of the iGuide systems that realtors have, drones and gimbals and all those things. Man, that turned out amazing. So big shout out to you. That project looked awesome. So yeah, I definitely have some questions, but let's get to some of the chat box here. I'll read them out to you and just ask some of the things. But so they talked about electric baseboard heatings and running separate HVAC. You know, here in the comments, a lot of people are saying stay away from baseboard heating. HVAC systems or the furnaces are the way to go. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, so with baseboard heaters, we don't live in we pay for electricity out here versus gas. Electricity is way more expensive. So you still, like, even though you're running baseboard heaters, you still need an HRV, which is a home recovery ventilation. So you still have to have a system to move air around. You can't have stale air, but the city requires you 2 heating sources. So a cheap fix is obviously, you think baseboard heating, but in the end, you will pay through utilities year after year after year. The furnace will earn its value over time. So just be cautious of that.
Awesome. Yeah, I know that the electricity costs can eat up pretty quick. And if you're definitely charging a flat rate for utilities and you're seeing these electricity bills, you're like, man, what are my tenants doing? This is ridiculous. So gas is definitely the cheaper alternative for us here in Alberta. Talking about, you know, 100 amp panels and servicing, you mentioned that you had a 70 amp panel in that one property, you had to bring it up to speed. Alco's mentioning that the city's looking to do bringing people up to 125 amp servicing. If somebody already has a 100 amp service, would it be beneficial for them to bring it up to 125? Or is that something that would just be, you know, out of scope?
You know what, I don't, it depends on the area, but I really don't believe if you have enough to feed what you got, it's fine. Like if I look at a 1960s bungalow, is there really going to be, are you adding AC? Are you adding things like, if you start adding it up, like 2 laundry sets, now AC, you've got 2 stoves, you know, then you start adding. But if you're just making it so slow and simple and you're not planning on expanding on some major utilities, or, you know, then I don't think it would be worth it. But personal preference, right? Like I get it. But I look at the ones that I buy, the 1960s houses, if you get what, 25, 30 years out of them, they're ready to be infilled into something shiny. So, you know.
100%. Yeah. And, you know, talking about budgets, it's making sure that you're staying on top of it and some of those extras that you should add to it. You also mentioned, you know, saving things. Is it needed now? What are some of those things that you would say, hey, you know, is this maybe something that I should wait to put this in? Or what are the necessities that when you're going through with the first project, things that are like, it has to be done? And what are some of the things that you can push away for maybe doing 5 or 10 years down the road?
I like the, at a rough-in stage, let's make the bones of the house solid. So let's look at putting like I just look at like a tub surround with tile and all that. Sure, looks nice, but like Olko said, he prefers a 1-piece tub. We prefer a 4-piece tub with minimal caulking to avoid that stuff. Because I know on my rentals, every time I go to a tub or something like that, I just see the gross, filthy caulking and it bugs me every time, right? So if you can avoid stuff like that, I'm just saying like on the grand scheme of thing, you know, you want a feature wall, you want tile, this elaborate tile on your backsplash. Those are all adders you can put down the road, you know. Sure, you've got this vision. If we could put proper backing where you want to do a wall mount after or a feature wall, like these are all things that you can do as you rent and you make some income. You could go, maybe the roof is good for another 5 years, let's say. Can you do it 5 years down the road and save you your money now? You know, can the walkway be leveled instead of, you know, pouring a whole new concrete? Maybe. Like there's ways of saving money, you know, fixing the grading, fixing it so you have a good sound investment, but yet you aren't going to pay for it all up front.
100%. And I know for myself and some of the, we talk about after repair values, what are the things that are adding to the property versus, you know, what are the things that already should be there? And, you know, you're talking about shingles, and you're talking about leveling sidewalks and things like that. You know, mud jacking and pouring concrete, not the cheapest thing out there, but, you know, is it going to protect that investment? You put $80,000, $100,000 into this basement suite, but you say, I'm going to cheap out and not level, you know, not do proper grading.
Yeah.
I'm sure you probably see people wanting to cut corners that way as well.
Yeah, and I don't blame, like it is a big budget. Like basement suites aren't cheap. Like to go spend 70, 80, you know what I mean, $1,000 on a basement, you're like, what, you know, but it's the bones. It's the bones of your house. It's all your mechanical, it's all your wiring, it's everything. Like everything other than the bones is just cosmetic that could be swapped out easily, right? Like so just spend the money in the right places and be cautious of overruns. The shiny syndrome, right?
The shiny syndrome, 100%. What are the things though, you know, there are quite a few basement suites in the city and in specific locations that can be a little bit competitive. What are some of the things that you've done to add for your tenants' sake, you know, to set yourself apart from some of the competition that you see in the rental market?
Um, I guess for me is just even if your place is old, it's got to be clean. It's got to be desirable, like not even desirable, but it's got to be clean, and you got to be a good person, a good landlord, or you might have a good property management company, feeling like this is their home. Like, you know, we all come home to our you know, come home to your humble place or go home to your nesting place or whatever, and it's got to feel like that. If it's not feeling like that, then you're going to go through. We screen excessively hard just to put good people in home, but yet in return, we are the no BS. You know, I'll provide references to you if you provide references to me, even to show you how good of a landlord I am, right? So, but to stand out, I would say kitchen cleanliness, appliances. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it's just the little things. It's not to say you have the shiniest appliance, but maybe it doesn't look like it's been used for 20 years, right? Maybe you have a high-speed internet, brag it, you know, and brag about it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you got a nice yard space. Like I've done some where I've divided yards right in half, you know, or I've made one where one has one deck and one has the other deck. So if you could kind of separate something, give them something of their own, that
Mm-hmm.
makes a big difference too.
100%.
And
And go ahead.
and everyone has a pet these days. So if you could be pet friendly, have a fenced yard, you're adding a lot of people to the pot.
I 100% agree. And that's something that that's something that I definitely have talked to, you know, with my tenants as well. What we've been able to do is in our first property, we ended up just we uh, put our laundry right in between the suites, and some of the complaints that we got were, oh, now I have a pet and the only way I can take them out is through the front yard, so now I have to walk around to the backyard if I want to let them out. I mean, people are lazy, right? So as a tenant, you want to put yourself in the shoes. It's minus 30 out, you're kind of on a main road. Would you just put your dog out in front of that area? Or is it better to have that side or separate entrance so that they have some privacy, they have a fenced yard, and some of those little things?
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes, you know, a lot of these old bungalows, like I know a lot of people are suing these old bungalows. You could add a patio door. You could add a, you know, an entry door on the main floor going out, like we did that video. Like how much value does that add where somebody could get a direct in and out and not have to go through, like around, if they're renting the garage, they have a direct access to the garage and still have a lockable door they can leave at. So there's different ways adding value.
100%. 100%. So this is a new one, and you know what, actually very excited to hear your thoughts on this one. So I have a client who's converting a duplex into a fourplex, essentially adding 2 basement suites. And one of the codes officer told them, hey, you know what we need is a acoustic engineer approval. And he was mentioning a rating of STC 50. I know that that's something that's been thrown around. Is that something that you've seen come through on legal suites? And maybe can you elaborate a little bit on what an acoustic engineer would do? What are the things you need to bring that up to snuff?
So the city has a form that you need to fill out when you're doing a basement conversion. And they give you different options. So if you're new construction, if you've got engineered joist base, if you go through that form, in the end, depending, like a duplex has different like requirements. Actually, the inner wall needs to be like have set noise bearing also, but he's just referring to a certain part of that form. And you can find this form online on the City of Edmonton's for soundproofing. But in the end, I know that if I have 5.5 inches of a wool mineral product like a Roxol, I have a resilient channel, and I've got 1/2 inch drywall, I am conforming to today's code. So the inspector was just calling a section of that form and saying, we need to know what you're going to be doing. So,
and have you seen it being stamped by engineers or needing that approval? Or as long as you have those things in place, you should be good?
You have option A, an engineered stamp report. Option B, fall within this requirement, or option C. Like there's A, B, or C. There's no one soundproofing that they require. They give you options. So as long as he's within one of his options, the inspector would. And so the city is calling a ready to cover inspector. So inspection. So that's after all your rough-ins are done, your electrical's done, you're insulated and you're poly and you've got Roxol in the ceiling. They want to come in and inspect it. They want to make sure there's soundproofing. They want to make sure your walls are insulated properly and the vapor barrier is there before you go and put drywall. That's where your ready to cover is triggered. And that's where this question of this inspector came up, is at that stage.
Gotcha. Okay, another big question, and I've had debates between contractors, and I'm very interested to hear your thoughts on this. To put a sump pump in or to not put a sump pump in? What are your thoughts and the reasons why?
When in question, yes, always. We've dug dry pits, I don't care. It's a backup. A sump pump is a backup. I've had a flood in the basement that has sump pump that was happened to be across the house, right? We have different water tables in Edmonton. If you're going to be in the Meadowlark area, I'm going to say yes. We like that West Edmonton Mall area has a high water table, but that is a fail safe for the extra $1,000 that it cost. Yes, I'm gonna say yes. Do I need to do it every time? No, I don't. But if there's no sign of, if it's a 1960s house and there's no sign of water, could I? Yes. Could I not? Yes. It's entirely up to the owner, and you got to make sure that once you make that decision, you make that decision.
Yeah, and I know that on the other end of the debate, a lot of people, or the contractors that I've spoken to, have said, well, if you dig open the ground and it's fairly dry down there and it's a 1960s home, why reintroduce water to a property that doesn't have any in the first place? So I mean, it's that debate. And with the basement suites I kind of gambled. I did one with, did one without, and I did one with. So stay tuned. I'll let you know if the one without floods or the one with floods, and we'll figure out what happens. But I know with record-setting rainfall last summer, we were pretty dry on all properties, which was fantastic.
Changing, if you're not gonna have a sump pump, that's one thing, but make sure your grading's good. like all the way around. Like do whatever you can, fix your grading, make sure your eaves troughs are down and away, not just down. And make it so they're bulletproof so that they're like fastened to something that a tenant can't go and just remove a downspout. Like there's little ways, fasten them to your fence, bring them 10 feet, 20 feet away from the house if possible, right? Like proper maintenance
100%.
is so important.
Yeah, and as you know, I'm sure, if a downspout is a nuisance, and I had a sump pump hose that was, I went to my rental property and it was literally just sitting at the foundation because it was a pain for the tenant because it was a tripping hazard,
Yeah.
and they put it there not to be, negligence or to make something happen. They just didn't know what it was, and so also educating your tenants on that is super super important.
Yeah.
Um, one I guess final question. We're almost getting here to 9 o'clock, but cutting windows. I know a lot of times as I go through properties with clients, they always ask me, is this the size? Even for light, should I be cutting these windows? Um, Maybe give us some stats and information for what you see on how many times are you cutting windows? Is it worth it? What are the typical costs to cut a window to get that egress that you need?
Okay, so one window new cutout with window well, you're looking about 2,000 bucks a window. That's what from start to finish. So from cutting it, installing it, adding the jam, whatever, framing it out, changing some framing. A lot of times you could play with the layout. So if you have windows on one end of the house, you can put your bedrooms there, and you don't necessarily need to cut the window out. Some window are big enough, and you could go a full frame window. So I don't know if people haven't seen that, but it's a full hinging window that opens in the frame, and then you still have like a slider window in it. So it just allows more space, and sometimes those will allow you to not have to cut out any concrete. So it's an $1,100 window, but you don't have to cut out concrete. So it is cheaper than the option of going cutting a new window. Um, I'm a big believer. Like we live in a dark, winterish, you know what I mean, climate. So if you can add one window in the kitchen or the living room, that can make a world of difference. You know,
100%.
adding a better lighting, a better pot light, or maybe you open up a structural wall inside, and you do an LVL beam and you kind of open stuff up maybe 10 feet, and maybe you get some natural light from a different area. That's what like very important. But sometimes you can't get away with it. Sometimes you got to cut windows, and that's just what it is, and it's part of doing business. And like I said, what's more important is the safety of your tenants. So it's part of the package.
100%. Well, I will leave with one last question. Do you need a permit for cutting windows?
We don't. If it's an engineer drawing, like if you're adding a new window, yes. If you're with the city, like a lot of times we'll put it as like if there's an existing window hole and everything else, you don't necessarily have to. Should you? Yes. It depends on the situation. Obviously, and when in doubt, pulling a permit to make sure it's legal is fine. But the city doesn't go knocking on people's doors asking for their permit to cut windows.
For sure. For sure. Well, thank you so much, Remi, for the wealth of knowledge and just the tips and tricks when looking at getting into a project like this. I know it's a ton of work, and you definitely want people who are experienced taking on that job. Because I know that those red stickers are fairly easy to get. So you want to make sure that you're getting the right trades and the right people in there. So again, thank you so much.
Okay, cheers. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, to end the evening, thank you so much for everyone. We had a huge number of people. It was fantastic. I really appreciate Alco, Remi, Bobby, James, and Devin joining and passing on some knowledge to some fellow investors and like-minded individuals. Our next event is, again, guys, please remember we changed the event from the last Wednesday of the month to the third Wednesday of the month. So next one, it is in the group chat. There is a Zoom link already there. You can register on Meetup. You can register on Facebook, LinkedIn. April 21st is the next Mogul Mastermind event. And last but not least, I also want to let you know that I know some people in the breakout rooms have talked about the Mogul Mastermind Investor Education Plan. So if that's something that you do want to be registered on and have some information be sent to you via email, please message marketing@mogulrg.com, and we'll make sure we get you touched up and sent up on that as well. So thanks again, everyone, for coming to Mogul Mastermind. It was a great success, and we'll see you next time.